The maternity ward was cozy, like basking in the sun. Emily, cuddling her baby, must have been super happy. Want to hold her? Emily asked John, who seemed a bit nervous. John scratched his head, feeling awkward. I might drop her. Maybe later. Emily glanced at me, seeming proud as she focused on her baby. It was like she was trying to show off compared to me, someone without kids. I wish I had a kid, John muttered cheerfully, looking at Emily. Trying not to laugh, I replied seriously, "Well, isn't there one right in front of you?" John and Emily looked confused until someone walked in and handed them something that made their faces go pale. I'm Sarah, 29 years old. My husband John is turning 32, and we're celebrating our 5th year of marriage. We both work at the same company, but in different departments. We met at work and fell in love. John, a successful salesperson, was quite popular among the female employees for his charm and sales skills. Before we got to know each other, I used to admire him from afar whenever we crossed paths in the hallway. Our first real interaction happened by chance when he helped me pick up some documents I dropped. Sorry, thank you so much. No, it was my fault for bumping into you. No, not at all. I was just spacing out. No, it was me. We couldn't help but find the situation amusing as we exchanged nods back and forth. As we picked up the documents, we shared a laugh and locked eyes. After that, we started chatting whenever we met in the hallway and occasionally went out for drinks or dinner. John's stories about his sales experiences were fascinating, and I understood why he excelled in his job. When we decided to tie the knot, some of my female colleagues were surprised. I left my job when we got married and became a homemaker. But circumstances led me back to work 2 years ago, though at a different company from John's. Since then, we've been working hard together. Although we still have a mortgage, we've managed to buy our own condo and save a bit. Our relationship may not be as romantic as when we first got married, but I believe we're doing well. Sometimes John comes home late, but when he's early, he pitches in with household chores, saying, "You're working too, Sarah. It's only fair." My friends envy me, saying, "You've got yourself a great husband." But we do have our share of problems, the biggest being our struggle to have children. We both adore kids and have dreamed of starting a family since we got married. Yet after 5 years, we're still childless. With my age creeping up, I'm starting to consider fertility treatment seriously. Surprisingly, John seems more relaxed about it lately. A few months ago, he was enthusiastic about starting a family together, but lately he seems less interested. He stopped bringing up the topic of children altogether. "Don't you want kids anymore?" I asked him one day. John looked surprised. "Why would you think that?" he replied. Feeling a bit frustrated, I said, "Because you haven't mentioned it lately." John gave me a gentle smile. "That's not true, Sarah. I do want to have children with you, but I don't want to pressure you," he explained, hugging me comfortingly. Another concern is the strained relationship between John and my dad. My mom assures me they'll warm up to each other eventually. But whenever John is around my dad, he seems tense. It makes me wonder if they'll ever really get along. It's understandable though, considering my dad is the executive vice president of John's company. When John first came to my house to meet my parents, he was so nervous he could hardly speak. My dad even teased him, "You're one of my salesmen, right?" I got defensive, saying, "John is the best salesman." My dad laughed it off, assuring John it was just a joke, which finally made John smile. Sometimes I worry that John faces challenges at work because his father-in-law knows everything he does. When I bring up my concerns, John brushes them off. "It's not so bad when you're the son-in-law of the executive VP. Even the bosses treat you differently," he says. "I'm not taking advantage of it, but they're just more understanding," he adds. "But doesn't that make work tougher for you?" I ask. "Nope," he replies, laughing, seemingly unfazed by the situation. The truth is, there's another reason for the tension between John and my dad. 2 years ago, John had a financial mishap unrelated to work, and my dad helped him out. It was a big deal, and it's why I went back to work. I think John feels guilty about it, even though my dad never brings it up. I can see John wants to make my dad proud, not just as a salesman, but as his son-in-law too. Since we don't have kids, we often go on dates on our days off. One day, after watching a movie, we ran into one of John's coworkers while strolling around town looking for a place to eat. "Was surprised to see you here," Emily exclaimed, spotting us first. "This is one of my coworkers. They also got married after we did, from an office romance," John explained. Emily, who was noticeably pregnant, mentioned she was about to start maternity leave. Thanks for always looking out for my husband, Emily said, her expression twitching slightly. Oh, it's nothing really, I replied, trying to keep it light, but I sensed some tension. It felt like she wasn't entirely friendly towards me. Hey, that's not nice, Emily, her husband scolded her. Sorry about that. We really appreciate your support, he said. He seemed younger than me but easygoing and friendly. He probably excelled in sales with his calm demeanor. It seemed Emily got along well with John, even touching his arm in front of me, his wife. Her husband Tom watched her with a mix of surprise and irritation. What are you two up to? Her gaze towards me felt challenging. John sensed my discomfort and quickly intervened to ease the tension. Maybe Tom harbored suspicions about John and Emily's relationship just like I did. Honestly, I didn't have the best impression of Emily, but I was starting to see Tom in a different light. Once doubts creep in, they're hard to shake. While I didn't think Emily, visibly pregnant, would go to a hotel with John, the possibility of infidelity crossed my mind. Deciding to take action rather than dwell on it, I hired a detective and purchased hidden cameras. I installed them in key areas of the house while the detective monitored John's activities outside. If he was cheating, we'd find out. If not, things would return to normal. I often unwind with long baths, finding solace in the warm water. Soaking for at least an hour is my way of rejuvenating. If John was cheating, this would be an opportune time for him. With my smartphone in hand, I checked on John's activities while soaking. Most days, he seemed to be watching TV or working, but occasionally he appeared to be communicating with someone. The motion detecting cameras ensured I wouldn't miss anything, even when I wasn't actively watching. I meticulously reviewed the recordings and audio, and to put it bluntly, my trust in John was shattered. To compound matters, I discovered that John was the father of Emily's baby. While watching the footage, I couldn't help but gasp in disbelief. John was on the phone with Emily, inquiring, "Is our baby all right?" Though I couldn't hear her response, his serious tone indicated he wasn't joking when he replied, "That's wonderful news." During one of John's bath times, I checked his phone and was stunned by the messages exchanged between him and Emily. "Are you okay?" "No suspicions." "Don't worry, he doesn't even know he's infertile." It was a devastating blow to his pride as a man. It felt too heartbreaking to confront him with the truth. Reading their conversation left me feeling unsettled. I couldn't help but wonder if Emily cheated because her husband, Tom, was sterile, or if John justified his infidelity because I wasn't getting pregnant. I scrolled through their exchanges, taking screenshots with my smartphone as evidence. Additionally, I retrieved Tom's contact details from John's phone. Wouldn't anyone in my shoes feel the same desire for revenge upon discovering this betrayal? They say misery loves company, and I made sure to gather ample evidence before reaching out to Tom, just in case he doubted Emily's infidelity or decided to take her side and thwart my plans. I arranged to meet Tom at the cafe without informing Emily or John. To avoid raising suspicion, I called ahead and informed him about Emily and John's affair. He didn't appear overly shocked or distressed when he arrived. When I thanked him for coming, he simply nodded. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you, Sarah, about something," he said. Curious, I inquired, but Tom insisted on hearing my side first. He explained that revealing John's betrayal would be a betrayal in itself, and he needed a compelling reason to do so. I presented Tom with the evidence gathered by the detective and the proof I had collected. As he examined the images discussing sterility, his expression twisted in disbelief. "Emily seems certain about this here. Do you know anything about it?" I shared that we'd been married for 3 years and underwent testing about a year into our marriage. Tom and Emily had been eager to start a family early on, so he found it strange that they hadn't succeeded after a year. After the testing, I never actually saw the results myself. Emily assured me everything was fine on her end, he explained. Listening to his side, I realized the depth of the deception. I pondered why Emily didn't divorce Tom, knowing he couldn't have children. "Oh, that's because Emily is in debt," Tom explained. Apparently, Emily's desire to flaunt her lifestyle led her to rack up debts buying designer bags and clothes she couldn't afford on her salary. Now they were working together to pay off the debt, with the condition that Emily would curb her extravagant spending. Remembering Emily's behavior last time I saw her, her need for attention and luxury made sense. She probably felt threatened by John's attention to me and maybe wanted to make Tom jealous too. "Debt, huh? Sounds like a perfect match for John," I blurted out, earning a puzzled look from Tom. In gratitude for his honesty, I decided to share something about John from 2 years ago. Interesting, Tom remarked with a smirk, clearly thinking along the same lines as me. I'm considering a divorce, I confessed. Me too. It's comforting to know you're thinking the same, Tom replied. Then he revealed something he had been holding back. Was your first encounter with John really accidental? He asked. I nodded. Yes, I dropped my documents and John helped me pick them up. It wasn't an accident, Tom interjected. What? He did it on purpose to create an opportunity? According to Tom, John had noticed my interest in him for a while. Tom was convinced that given the opportunity, John could get close to me. As I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment at my own obviousness, Tom continued. If his interest had solely been in you, Sarah, it would have been one thing. But that wasn't the case. How so? I inquired. Because of who you are, the executive's daughter. John seemed quite pleased when he boasted to Tom about getting close to the executive director's daughter, meaning me. He seemed to view marrying me as a shortcut to advancing his career. It all makes sense now. That's why he was so mindful of my father and got so jittery when he met us, I realized. He even went around at work telling people he could easily talk to my father-in-law, the executive director, John bragged. I hadn't known about this since I'd left the company. John had brushed it off, claiming people were just being considerate on their own. But that's not the case. He married me to exploit me, to use my father's position as a threat. Yet he turns into a nervous wreck in front of my dad. It's pathetic, I confided in Tom. Can you get tested again? I'll do the same, I suggested. As for John and Emily, I had no intention of forgiving either of them. John had been antsy and excited for days leading up to the celebration of the birth. What should we get for the celebration? It's a boy. He'd exclaim happily, selecting gifts. The maternity ward greeted us with warmth and sunlight upon our arrival. Emily and Tom warmly welcomed us, and when John presented the clothes he had chosen, Emily's face lit up with joy. Tom excused himself to fetch drinks. With John attentively watching, Emily held the baby, radiating happiness. Would you like to hold him? John asked me with a smile, surrounded by our colleagues. John hesitated, scratching his head. Nah, he mumbled, glancing at me. Sensing my lack of enthusiasm, he quickly composed himself. I'm afraid I might drop him. Maybe later, he added sheepishly. Emily glanced at me, then chuckled, focusing back on the baby. It was evident she was subtly competing with me, knowing I didn't have children. I'd love to have a kid of my own, John remarked cheerfully, his gaze fixed on Emily. I almost laughed out loud at his comment but managed to maintain a serious expression. Well, isn't there one right in front of you? I quipped, trying to sound casual. Both John and Emily looked at me with confusion just as the door to the ward swung open abruptly. Tom entered with a couple of bottles of water, apologizing for the delay as he handed them out, slipping a folded piece of paper to Emily. Emily's expression shifted from confusion to shock as she unfolded the paper, revealing a divorce notice. What is this, some kind of joke? She exclaimed in disbelief. John, equally stunned, glanced at the document in her hand. Come on, Tom, this isn't the time for jokes. It's in poor taste, John remarked, his tone flat. It's no joke, Tom replied firmly. Emily's confusion turned to pale confusion, while John moved to confront Tom. I stepped in front of John and handed him my own set of divorce papers already unfolded. I'm not joking either, I declared. Moving to Emily's bedside, I laid out photos showing John visiting her house frequently during her maternity leave. What were you doing at my house when my husband wasn't home? I demanded. John, attempting to explain, claimed he was merely being considerate, checking in on Emily since they started at the company together. Yeah, John was just being thoughtful, Emily chimed in defensively. Their attempts to justify themselves seemed almost comical, as if they could talk their way out of the situation. It was absurd, especially considering their late-night communications. Was that concern for Emily or for the child in her belly, perhaps your own? I challenged John, sensing his anger rising. Stop it, Sarah. Emily is my colleague, and it's natural for her to be anxious about her first child. John retorted, his tone sharp. You're just jealous of me, aren't you? Just because you can't have kids, Emily interjected defensively, her words dripping with venom. I couldn't help but snort at her accusation, which only seemed to fuel her anger as she glared at me, her face flushed with frustration. Don't listen to her, Tom. This child is truly yours, Emily insisted, attempting to divert attention from the conversation. But Tom's mocking laugh coincided with me showing Emily the incriminating evidence on my smartphone. A recording of John joking about his own infertility, followed by a video of him inquiring about the well-being of our child. See, should we check who you were really talking to? I challenged as Emily's bravado faltered in the face of undeniable proof. We're just coworkers, joking around, Emily stammered, trying to regain her composure. I glanced down at her with pity as she met my gaze defiantly. Hold on to him properly, Emily. He's a precious life, I advised gently as the baby stirred in her arms, almost falling. The sudden cry of the baby pierced the tense atmosphere. Shut up, Emily snapped, just as Tom unfolded a piece of paper. I can't have kids, Emily. You know that. Tom's voice was calm but laced with bitterness as he addressed his wife, who froze under his gaze. Let's get a divorce, we both declared to our partners, the finality of the decision hanging heavily in the air. John, still attempting to salvage the situation, pointed a finger at me. This is all because of your infertility, Sarah. There must be something wrong with you, just like with Tom, he accused. I felt a surge of anger rise within me. It's not me, it's you, John. And don't you dare speak to me with such arrogance, especially when we're on the brink of divorce, I retorted, tossing the test results in his direction. The paper briefly stuck to his face before fluttering to the ground. Who do you think you are, speaking to me like that? Did you believe blaming me would absolve you of your actions? I demanded, spelling it out for him once more. Divorce. Do you even comprehend the gravity of that word? John's face drained of color as he stammered an apology, begging for forgiveness. Huh. Emily's astonished voice interjected as John pleaded. Tom and I exchanged a knowing glance and chuckled softly, reflecting on John's past mistake of accumulating a hefty debt through stock trading, which my father had covered. I had started working to repay it. My father's assistance came with a condition. John signed a promissory note. In addition to alimony, John would now face relentless pursuit for repayment from my father. With Emily's debt added to the mix, their future looked bleak. Well, best of luck to you both. You'll need it. We'll settle the rest through our lawyers, I declared, leaving John on the floor in tears as Tom and I exited the hospital room. My father, even angrier than me, enlisted the help of a lawyer he trusted to extract every cent from John, even tapping into John's share of our joint assets. But it still wasn't enough. John, now remarried to Emily but unaware of each other's financial burdens, faced criticism from Emily's parents upon discovering the truth, leading to yet another divorce. Emily's parents, while temporarily covering her debts, eventually had to send her back home, where she endured daily reproach. Despite the hardships, their grandchild, the innocent babe, was showered with love and lacked for nothing, which eased my concerns. John, unable to remain at the company, resigned and now resides in a modest apartment, toiling from dawn till dusk to meet his obligations of debt, alimony, and child support. Meanwhile, I've settled into a rented apartment, embracing solitary living. Tom and I have become drinking buddies, meeting up on weekends for quiet moments of camaraderie. He may not be as chatty as John, but I appreciate the peaceful companionship he offers.